How's it going, everybody? You know who it is. My name is Sunwoo, and in today's video I'm gonna review the Teenage Engineering OPZ line module, as well as give you some ideas for setups in which you can use this module. So let's get right into it. Bang bang. First, let's get the unboxing out the way. If you order the line module, you will receive two little boxes, one for the line module itself and another one for the ground loop noise isolator. In the line module box, you'll find the module itself, as well as a little sticker sheet indicating what the ins and outputs are, as well as a tiny manual that can give you an idea of what you can do with the module. And then there is the ground loop noise isolator, which has the purpose to eliminate these whining noises that can happen if you have a lot of gear connected in and out of each other. So this is very helpful to have. And now let's have a look at the module itself. It looks very nice and green, as you can see. I think it looks really beautiful, although that shouldn't matter, but that's what Teenage Engineering is very good at, make nice looking things. And the module has 4 in and outputs. You have a MIDI out, MIDI in, or trigger out and trigger in, and you have a line output as well as a line input. On the MIDI side, you can send either a MIDI signal or a trigger signal to old school drum machines or Eurorack, or you can send a pocket operator sync signal, which we'll have a look at later. And the same goes for the input. You can either send MIDI into it or a trigger signal and get your devices running in sync. And on the very bottom of the module, you have this nice little screw, which will ensure that the module is staying in place once you have put it into your OPZ. So let's do that. Now you'll see if we turn the OPZ on, you should get a little light effect right here. Wonderful. That means our module has been recognized and we can start working with it. And now, before we get to the review part of the video, let's have a little bit of fun and test out a few setups using the OPZ and the line module. For our first setup, we are going to use the OPZ together with the PO33, which is the cheapest setup I'm going to be suggesting, but nevertheless is a very powerful combo, as the PO33 makes up for some weaknesses of the OPZ, which is sample time and ease of sampling. Therefore, these two are a really great combo. Let's hook them up and make something with them. So we want to have the sync out connected here into the pocket operator. And now we just make sure we have the correct sync mode selected on the pocket operator. Sync mode 2 should be all right. Now let's get the audio from the pocket operator back into the OPZ. Audio input right here. Wonderful. Now we're going to switch over to the module track right here, and this is where we can handle the signals coming into the module as well as the ones going out of the module. Here, for example, I can change the volume, and I can also apply the OPZ's effects now to everything that's coming from outside. That's one thing you couldn't do with the pocket operator on its own, because its effects are rather limited, more beat oriented, and also not as high fidelity as the ones on the OPZ. And another thing that we can do to our audio input is filtering, as well as applying LFOs. And while that already adds quite a lot of functionality to the pocket operator itself, of course, once you integrate the OPZ's internal tracks, you can make some quite interesting stuff. And another thing that I really like about this combo is that you can use different punch-in effects on the sample chops on the POKO than you are using on your drums or melodic sounds on the OPZ. Let me quickly demonstrate. And for our second setup, I'm going to use the Korg Monolog as an external analog effects processor in order to process one of the OPZ's tracks. Okay, now that I get this set up, let me quickly explain how it works. The audio output right here from the module is sending its signal to the audio input on the Korg Monolog, and then the audio output from the Korg Monolog is sending the signal back into the OPZ. On the OPZ itself, I've prepared a little sequence that has a chord progression like this. On the module track, we can now decide to send this chord progression, or rather the chord track, to this output and remove it from the main output. And that would mean it's being sent to the Korg Monolog. So let's do this. And if I play the OPZ now, you won't hear anything. And that's because the Korg Monolog needs some kind of note input in order to let the external audio through. So we're just going to do that quickly. And now I can use the Monolog as an external effects processor and do things like add drive. And I can even add the Monolog's wonderful LFO. And on top of that, we can add the OPZ's effects to the signal that is coming back from the Monolog. Yeah, as you can see, there is lots of fun to be had with this combination as well, and I think I'm gonna use this in future a lot more. So if you don't want to miss it, subscribe to the channel and ring the bell. And now to setup number 3. And for our last setup, let's introduce this one here and explore the D-Box synth engine. In this setup, the OPZ is sending MIDI messages to the OP1, playing the D-Box synth engine, which is a digital drum synth, and then is sending the audio out to the output and into the OPZ's input. And that means that the OPZ can further process our drum sounds made on the OP1. Now, those of you that have used the OP1 know that these keys here do not send any velocity messages. And therefore, we can use our OPZ to play the drum synth engine at different velocity, which is really cool. So for example, we've got this hi-hat track right here. And if I play this, it's playing the same hi-hat, this sound here. But using the velocity step component here, I've programmed different velocities into it. So it sounds like this. As you can hear, there are 2 different velocities playing, and that of course makes it already sound more interesting. Now let's send MIDI messages also from the snare track and the kick track. And maybe add a bass line to it. Now, of course, on the module track, we can add a little spice to this drum sequence by, for example, adding some more effects to the sound coming from the OP1. A little bit of reverb or delay. But that is not the only way we can process the sound. We can also send the audio coming in from the module to the tape track, which is really cool. And the cool thing is that not only can we use the tape track and the effects on the OPZ, but also on the OP1 at the same time. And on top of all of that, I can also layer these drums together. So right now I am just sending MIDI into the OP1 and using the OP1 sounds. But if I play the sounds from the OPZ, which are right now muted, as you can tell by the red lights here, I can also layer other drum sounds on top of the drum synth in the OP1. And this again allows me to layer even more effects. For example, now I have different drums playing on the OPZ. If I go to the snare drum and, for example, add some reverb, now I bring back in the OP1 sounds. That means that only the snare sound, or half of the snare sound, the half that is coming from the OPZ, is having reverb applied to it, whereas the sound from the OP1 would be dry. And therefore you can create so many different layers of sounds and effects, and it's just really a lot of fun to play with. All right, these were my first little setup ideas for using the new OPZ line module with other gear. Now let's get to my opinions, my review part of the video. And let me first of all say that I would have bought this module just for having the line input in order to sample directly through line in rather than through the USB-C port. So even for that, it's worth it for me. Yes, it's quite expensive, but the extra functionality that you get on top of that is really blowing my mind. I mean, I really didn't expect to have this much fun using the OPZ with other gear, sending out OPZ tracks to other gear and processing them and feeding them back in, or feeding audio from other devices into this and processing them with the OPZ's effects or the tape track is really a whole lot of fun. Or just using a pocket operator and extending the sampling capabilities of the OPZ, I think is a great setup as well. And therefore, I can really recommend the OPZ line module. Quick downsides I would mention is, of course, the price is relatively high. If you're used to the old OPZ modules, it's higher than the Rumble and it's higher than the old OpLab module. And on top of that, they didn't provide a MIDI TRS adapter with it. So if you want to hook other gear up via MIDI, you need to buy at least one of those if you want to go only MIDI out or only MIDI in. Of course, if you want to do both, you need to buy two of these adapters. And I think for the price, it would have been nice if at least one of these would have been included. Other than that, I think it's completely worth it. I am having lots of fun with it. It really breathes new life into the OPZ. And one more thing I gotta mention, as opposed to the old OpLab module, I have not had any connectivity issues, so the new screw-in system for the module really seems to work, at least for me, so there have been no dropouts whatsoever. So what more to say than the OPZ line module definitely gets my stamp of approval, and it's not going to leave my OPZ anytime soon, because it really helps me to hook the OPZ up to all my other gear and make the OPZ the center of my setup by being able to send MIDI out to my other devices and then getting audio from my other devices into the OPZ and being able to process that audio further using the tape track and the effects tracks. Yep, it's a great addition to the setup. I'm gonna make more tutorials on it in future, going a little more in depth of how I'm setting everything up. So if you don't want to miss those videos, make sure to subscribe and ring the bell. And I appreciate you watching this video. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to leave a like, comment down below, and check this and this out. Hopefully see you next time. Until then, have a great time. Peace.